I'm all right with most of Andromeda's, crew. There are God, Liam. I get kind of what they were going for with him. They wanted somebody like kind of outgoing, adventurous, and all that, but they pretty much went overboard on what his flaw is. His main flaw being like really impatient and beyond gung ho. Um, because his mission isn't too bad. Like you get to do some interesting stuff in the environment, but it just showcases more the reason why you don't bring him along too much because he is beyond hot headed. Uh, Even more so than PB. Like PB goes gaga over like all the remnant tech and whatnot, but I feel like they balanced some things with the other characters a bit better than they did with Liam. They probably overcorrected with Liam because of how some people reacted to probably even Jacob and a little bit maybe even with Caden because maybe they thought that, oh well, we made Caden a little bit too reliable. That's the thing. Like Caden is the type of character that's kind of like the straight man, the the guy you bounce off of compared to the other characters. And for some people that works, some it doesn't. Like again, it's the whole fight of like this character's just, they're set in stone. They don't change. They're not dynamic, which is fine. Like we need more characters that aren't dynamic. It's okay to have just a regular character. What you see is what you get on the box. Not everybody needs a cathartic kind of change arc like what even what Ashley goes through a bit, or even what Garrus goes through a bit, depending on what you do with them. It, it's just I think Americans still overemphasize dynamic arcs over everything else because like, oh, if it doesn't have any character development at all, it's worthless. Throw the baby out with the bathwater. No, it's just something that's more prevalent nowadays with American output. I stress that because everybody else under the sun still does different character types that cater to different types of audiences, which is the reason why they're usually, kicking America's ass when it comes to storytelling. Because they cater to various audiences that still exist over there to, read or even view certain things. It's the reason why, like, I really wish I could back more American projects, but majority of them are gaga over this character changes, so they fundamentally go through the hero's journey. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, sometimes it's good just to have a rock solid stone, like a Doc Savage, or a Captain Future, or Sherlock Holmes that doesn't change whatsoever. So I think, again, to go back to Liam, he felt like he was kind of like a course correct in Andromeda to people's reactions to other human squad mates in the series, where they're like, oh, we'll just abandon the human guys as quick as possible, unless, again, most people will still, they'll be like, oh, Miranda or Jack is better because they go through a big change depending on what your shepherd is. And I'm like, okay, I get that, but it's just like, it's a preference. There are decent amount of people out there that do prefer to have a character that is on the straight and narrow, and what you see is what you get. Take even like something like Iron Bull, for instance, with Inquisition or whatever. He doesn't change all that much. Like his position is what it is. He does have his mission where you have to help protect his band if possible, but like with Andromeda, it seemed like they were trying to overcorrect a lot of things because, especially at the time when it came out, it was still suffering from a lot of the burnout from what happened with Mass Effect 3. And not even just the endings, it's just how certain stories were tied off. Not everything was tied off as well, if I take off the rose-colored glasses, besides, the ending kerfuffle, it wasn't nearly as well thought out as even people were saying back in the day. Yes, most of the Mass Effect games had pretty decent side content. The initial game had the most coherent main story because it was initially set up to basically galvanize that universe and basically give everybody a stepping stone. So that's the reason why, all their side missions off the Citadel, like with the random planets. Some of them stuck more than others because it helped build up the initial setting. It's just it was hobbled by the fact that they had to reuse assets. Not nearly as bad as what Dragon Age 2 did for it because of the schedule they are on. Again, most of this, like, they even with 2 and 3, they had a tendency to massively course correct, to be like, oh, well, we should have more of this or that, because people were upset with this or that. And again, Mass Effect 1 and even some parts of Andromeda had a pretty decent foundation for a different kind of play style, or like, mix and match of different gameplay elements. But again, Andromeda was left holding the bag to try to course correct things that it really shouldn't have been responsible for, but people still put it on it because oh, hey, it's another game in the Mass Effect series. So that's the reason why people are still debating whether or not they should call the next Mass Effect number 4 or number 5, because they don't really. Some people either want to include Andromeda, and some people are like, no, throw the baby out with the bathwater. But yeah, but Liam and even the Archon are an example of massive course correction, like where the Archon had interesting skeleton added to it, but since the Archon really didn't get in your face and kind of go tit for tat like Saren, he doesn't leave as much of a mark as Saren did, even though the Reaper itself was the main antagonist working through proxies. You have to have proxies that, like, even if it's a very simple proxy like Saren, you have to have it leave some sort of impression. So that's the reason why I also kind of put the Archon in the same category as Liam, where like, I get what they were going for, I really do, but sometimes you don't have to overcompensate. And that was the main crutch, I think, affecting Andromeda. They were trying to overcompensate on all sectors for, like, oh, we found the Mako exploration boring. Then, okay, throw all that out and just do, like, drive around in the Nomad on various planets, or at least, the top, like, what, 5 or 6. No, the jungle planet you didn't drive around in because it was small enough. But even with the planet setup, I'll probably go into that with the next video. But yeah, oh god, yeah, they had a part of it is a tendency to over accentuate the flaws, so that way the perception of the character being, like, overpowered or nearly flawless doesn't come into the equation, or at least they try to cut down on that idea. But overemphasizing the flaws can backfire just as much as, like, accentuating a lot of the virtues. It's just a case of how much, like, kind of like with cooking, how much seasoning do you want to add to this character before it becomes, like, oh boy, we added too much. Liam, my boy, you were pretty much the too much category in the majority of your presence in that game. I get it. They wanted somebody, again, that was enthusiastic, dedicated to the mission, and trying to do the best that he could, but by offsetting that too much with him being, a hothead and, like, super reckless, it ended up pushing him more towards, like, what the hell, bro, kind of category.